So last time I discussed the perfection of the gunas, that all gunas are perfect, and it is only the misidentification with the gunas. That is when the jiva, when the jivatma, when the kshetrajna, when he identifies with the prakriti, that's when things go awry. And I also pointed out that you cannot I also pointed out that while the gunas are perfect and they function perfectly on their own, when the Kshetrajna identifies with Prakriti and thinks that he is Prakriti, then everything goes awry. But by themselves, the gunas are perfect. I also pointed out that the individual soul, the Kshetrajna, is infinitesimal part of Krishna. And therefore, he is helpless against the play of the gunas. You cannot change one guna into the other yourself. But by turning to God, you can transcend the gunas. So, Krishna, as the solution to the problems of the gunas, points out in this chapter, chapter 14, that indeed we need to surrender unto Him through performing avyabhicharani bhakti. When we practice bhakti without interruption, then we transcend the gunas and we simply observe them. We become gun atita. Yet, Krishna understands that everyone cannot immediately engage in avyabhicharani bhakti. And therefore, just like in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna has explained, if you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. So, while Krishna in this 14th chapter clearly explains what the gunas are, and also clearly explains that the job of dealing with the gunas is to transcend them by surrendering into God, to Krishna with avyabhicharani bhakti. Still, Krishna describes the effect of identification with the gunas in detail in this chapter. The details of the gunas are actually part of Sankhya. They are not part of Vedanta. Vedanta says Sarva Khallu Idam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. So Brahman is layered on top of Sankhya. As we explained in the 13th chapter, Sankhya is subsumed to Vedanta. And Vedanta itself, or Brahman itself, is subsumed to Krishna, who at this end of this chapter will be taken to be the source of Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. This is the last verse of this chapter. I am the source, I am the rest, I am the origin of Brahman. That's clearly mentioned in this chapter. So, the earliest mention or the earlier mentions of the gunas you find in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in the third chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna clearly is asked by Arjuna, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts even unwillingly as if engaged by force? Arjuna vacha atha kena prayukto yam papam charti purusha anicchanapi varshneya balad iva niyojitah. And in reply, Krishna says to him, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguno samudbhava mahashano mahapapma vidya enam iha vairinam. And the Supreme Lord said, it is lust only, Arjuna. Lust, which is born out of contact with the Gunas and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So right in the third chapter, 37th verse, Krishna is pointing out to Arjuna that Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajoguno Samudbhava Mahashano Mahapapma Vidya Enam Iha Vairinam. That Prakriti is the cause and it is lust which is transformed into anger. Also, Krishna indicates that this Prakriti which covers the identity of you, the Kshetrajna, the Jivatma, the individual soul, the Purusha, the individual Purusha. You are conditioned and taken over by Prakriti, by Tamagun, by Rajagun and Sattvagun. And these three layers are given here, how Rajagun covers, how Tamagun covers, and how Sattvagun covers. And Krishna explains in text 38 of the third chapter that in Sattvagun, you are covered, the Kshetrajna is covered by Prakriti, just as smoke covers a fire. Dhuman avrita vahnir. When Rajagun is covering over the Kshetrajna who misidentifies with it, Krishna says, Yatha adarsho malenacha. Just like the mirror is covered by dust. And then he says, when Tamagun covers Prakriti, Tamaguni Prakriti covers the Kshetrajna or the individual Purusha or the Jivatma, Tamagun covers it just like the womb covers the embryo. Yatha olbein avrito garbhas tatha tene dam avritam. Dhumen avrita vanir yatha darsha malenacha. Yatha olbein avrite garbhas tatha tene dam avritam. So, you have to understand that Prakriti is a problem. It's a problem because the individual soul automatically is, when he comes into contact with Prakriti, when Krishna seeds the Mahat, also known here as the Mahat Brahma. Please understand, Mahat Brahma is not Brahman. Mahat Brahma is the total inchoate, unexpressed mass of Prakriti. Unexpressed Prakriti, the totality of it, is impregnated by the Supreme Purush, who becomes the seed-giving father. I've covered this last time. And Krishna says, thus, I am the seed-giving father. So in chapter 14, text 5, Krishna explains that this Prakriti is composed of three gunas: Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. You can call them goodness, passion, and ignorance. And when the living entity comes in contact with Prakriti, he misidentifies with this Prakriti and he becomes conditioned by them. This is described in chapter 14, text 5. Of all the three gunas, you might think that sattva guna is the best, but there is no best. You have to understand the three gunas are like three sets of handcuffs. So sattva guna is like a golden handcuff, which prevents you from realizing your spiritual identity and returning to Godhead. Rajagun is like stainless steel handcuffs, which prevent you from going to Krishna and returning to his abode. And Tamagun is like a rusty iron handcuffs, but they're all handcuffs nonetheless. And not only are they handcuffs nonetheless, but these handcuffs have their own individual ways of trapping you into misidentifying with Prakriti. So Krishna explains in text 6 of 14th chapter, Tatra sattvam nirmalatvad prakashakam anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanaga. So when you are in sattva gun, you are trapped by the idea of happiness. You are attached to happiness. These are people who are very keen on learning what makes people happy, what is the path to happiness. They buy all these self-improvement books, self-development books on how to be happy. What are the secrets of happiness? In fact, they've even got a course on happiness in Harvard. And it's one of the best attended classes with the largest student group because everybody thinks that happiness is the goal. Happiness is a trap. It traps you into identifying with Prakriti. Similarly, Sattvagun also traps you through the desire to acquire knowledge. So you seek knowledge and you seek happiness. And of course, Sattvagun does promote or does facilitate or make knowledge very easy to acquire. Therefore, he says, people situated in Sattvagun are conditioned by the idea of happiness and they're conditioned by the idea of seeking knowledge. In text 7 of the 14th chapter, Krishna says, Rajo ragatmikam vidhi trishna sanga samudbhavam tan nibadnanti kaunteya karma sangena dehinam. Rajagun, he explains, when the jiva, when the kshetrajna, when the individual purusha identifies with Rajagun, there are born unlimited desires and longings. And because of these unlimited desires and longings, you cling to performing activities to get some fruit or the other. You desire some result from your activities. You're frustrated, you're unhappy when you don't get the result of the activities that you are aspiring for. And you're driven into more and more and more activities. So, fruitive activities, you are bound to fruitive activities because there are unlimited desires and longings. In the 8th verse, Krishna describes what happens with Tamaguna. Tamaguna, of course, as I explained last time, is a necessary part of the gunas because it enables the physical body and mind and intelligence to take rest, to sleep, to recuperate, to rejuvenate. However, when one identifies with the tamaguna, tamaguna then causes delusion. Because obviously, when you're half asleep, when your mind is confused and bewildered and seeking to rest, you can't hear or you can't pay attention to what people are telling you, or you don't listen to what people are telling you. So he says, Pramadalasya nidrabis tad nibadnanti bharata. Tamastva ajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam. So there is total delusion because you're drowsy, you're sleeping, you're in tamaguna. And this leads you to madness, indolence, and sleep because you are misidentifying with these gunas. Actually, if you see the Mahabharata and you see the Ramayana, Mahabharata gives all these details. But in the Ramayana, they show the three gunas as being the embodiment of these three gunas are seen in the three brothers of Lanka. Vibhishan is the embodiment of Sattva-guna. Ravan is the embodiment of Rajaguna. And Kumbhakarna is the embodiment of Tamoguna. So Tamaguna, you find that Kumbhakarna sleeps, he behaves madly, he is a demon who is overcome by tamas because he embodies it. You find Ravan as the embodiment of Rajagun, full of lust and greed and anger. And then you have Vibhishan, who is the embodiment of Sattvagun. And he is the one who goes to Ram and surrenders unto him. So Sattvagun makes it possible for you to understand there is something beyond the gunas. And it takes you towards becoming gunatita. So Sattvagun is the preferred guna for understanding spiritual knowledge and advancing towards becoming gunatita. Whereas Tamagun, when all of these are perfect, as I pointed out, but although all of them are perfect, when you identify with each of them, they create problems, as has been discussed here in the Bhagavad-Gita. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati rajah karmani bharata jnanam avritya tu tamah pramade sanjayati uta. So the mode of goodness, that is sattvagun, conditions you to happiness. Rajagun conditions you to the fruits of action. And Tamogun conditions you to becoming mad and heedless. Rajas tamas chabhibhuyah sattvam bhavati bharata. Rajas sattvam tamaschaiva tamas sattvam rajastatah. Now you should understand one thing. There is no purity of the gunas within you. All the three gunas are present within all of us at all times. You can never be totally, purely sattvic. You cannot be totally rajasic. And one cannot be totally tamasic. These gunas are always mixed within ourselves. And not only are these three gunas mixed within ourselves, but There are times when Sattva Gun is predominant, there are times when Rajagun is predominant, there is Tamagun when there are times when Tamagun is predominant. In the early hours of the morning, in Brahma Muhurt, in the 2 hours before sunrise, Sattva Gun is predominant. That is the best time for meditation. That is the best time for japa. That is the best time for worship of God and the study of philosophy. Through the day, Rajagun is predominant. As the sun rises, Rajagun becomes more and more prominent, and it becomes less and less prominent towards the evening time. And once sunset occurs, Tamagun takes over. Tamagun taking over, you find that it is time for sleep and rest and recuperation, for rejuvenation. Indeed, if you follow these variations of the day along with the gunas, your gunas will begin to function more perfectly. They will become perfect. But when you become Rat Ka Raja, you liven up only in the night. You say, I am a night owl. Now I am going night to nightclubs. Now I am going to drink to bars. Now I am going to party. Then Tamagun takes over and it causes all kinds of problems. Similarly, there are people who want to work through the night because they cannot turn off Rajagun in the natural state. They keep on provoking and identifying with Rajagun and wanting to work through the night. But when the gunas are allowed to act at their normal diurnal variations, you will find more peace and more comfort because you're letting Krishna act through the gunas as they should act. But all the time these gunas are combating each other for supremacy. Sometimes Rajagun is prominent, sometimes Sattvagun is prominent, sometimes Tamagun is prominent. Sarvadvareshu dehesvin prakasha upajayate jnanam yada tada vidyad vivridham sattvam ityuta. As I explained in the last class, in Sattvagun there is activation of the Jnana Indriyas. The Jnana Indriyas are the gateways to the body. And your eyes, your ears, your sense of smell, your sense of taste or touch, all of these become illumined by light, the light of knowledge. Therefore, when you are in Sattvagun, you can see things in the right way. You can see what is appropriate, hear what is appropriate, and taste what is appropriate. You become cleansed inside and outside. There is the development of the symptoms of happiness, the desire for knowledge, and that is what Sattvagun is. Lobha pravrittir arambah karmanam asama sapriya spriha rajasya etani jayante vivridhe bharata sabah. When there's an increase in the mode of Raj, when there is an increase in Rajagun, the symptoms of great attachment, uncontrollable desire, hankering, and intense endeavor develop. So one loses all moderation. One is simply attached greatly to the uncontrollable desire, the thirst, and the intense effort in developing and working or doing activities which require a fruit. And then he explains in text 13, aprakasho apravrittischa pramado moha evacha tamasya etani jayante vivridhe kuru nandanaha. When there is a predominance of tamagun, then illusion, inertia, darkness, madness, all of these are manifested. So intoxicants are one way by which tamagun is aggravated. You take a drink because that alcohol helps you to sleep. You take a drink because it calms you down. It tunes down your overactive Rajaguna. And the problems all occur because you identify with these gunas, not because these gunas are harmful in themselves. Yada satve pravridhe tu pralayam yati dehabrit tadottama vidan lokan amalam pratipadayate. So one who dies when the Prakriti is in Sattvagun, he goes to the pure higher planets. So you don't become free, you don't attain moksha, you don't attain Jivan Mukti, you don't attain Videha Mukti either. Indeed, when you pass away from your body and you are attached to your gunas, which are predominantly in Sattvagun, you go to higher planets. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvate samaha. So you go to the higher planets, the upper planets. If you pass away from this body, when you are in Rajagun, then you take birth on this earth among those engaged in fruitive activities. Rajasi pralayam gatva karma sangeshu jayate tatha pralinas tamasi mudha yonishu jayate. Whereas when you pass away from the body in Tamagun, then you are born in the animal kingdom, or in the birth takes place in people who are limited in their intellectual functions. Karmana sukritasyahu satvikam nirmalam phalam rajasastu phalam dukham ajnanam tamasa phalam. So when you act while you are in Rajagun, you get distress and suffering. When you act in ignorance, in Tamagun, you perform foolish activities. But if you perform your actions in Sattvagun, then the works purify you. You become purified. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada mohau tamaso bhavato ajnanam evacha. From Sattvagun, knowledge develops. From Rajagun, sorrow develops. And from Tamagun, foolishness, madness, and illusion develop. All this when the Kshetrajna identifies with Prakriti instead of standing apart from it. ऊर्ध्वं गच्छन्ति सत्त्वस्तो मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति राजस जगन्य गुण वृत्तिस्त अधो गच्छन्ति tamasa. Those in Sattvagun go upward to the higher planets. Those in Rajagun go to the earthly planets. And those in the Tamagun, they go into hellish worlds. But none of them lead to salvation, to liberation, to return to Godhead. That is only when you become Gunatita. So Krishna says in text 19, Nanyam gunebhyo kartaram yada drashtanu pashyati gunebhyascha param vetti madbhavam so adhigacchati. When you see that everything in this world is all Prakriti, and there's nothing beyond this in all activities, and when you understand that the Lord, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, is transcendental to all these gunas, then he says, you shall know my supreme nature. And when you can transcend these three gunas, you can become free from birth and death and old age and distresses, and you can enjoy spiritual nectar even in this life as a Jivan Mukt. So we will conclude here, but essentially, to summarize, there are various things that happen to you when you are in touch with the gunas. And these gunas, they manifest. And even though you might struggle against them, you cannot overcome them. Mamaivanso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashastendriyani prakritisthani karshati. You are simply struggling with your prakriti, which includes your mind and your five senses. Krishna also says, Daivi esaguna mai mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. So Krishna points out that indeed this Prakriti is my divine energy, you cannot overcome it. But when you surrender unto me, you can cross beyond it. All problems arise from forgetting that you are Kshetrajna and identifying with Prakriti. Sattva gun is the best of the gunas, but it is still a guna. It is still a means to keep you trapped within this world. And therefore, one has to transcend all the gunas. And that will be what we will cover in the next session. If there are any questions on this subject, please feel free to go ahead and ask me.
Thank you, Shantanuji, for today's session. My first question is many people they take pride in being highly driven or always busy in today's world. So, is that also a form of misidentification of gunas?
No, it's wonderful if you're driven and you're working hard. That is the purpose and the principle of Bhagavad-Gita, that we have to work. But don't get carried away by your work. Don't become attached to your work. Don't become disappointed when you don't get the results of your work. Don't be disappointed if you're passed over for a promotion, or you're passed over for an increment, or you're passed over for an incentive. Take joy in your work and offer that work to God. And you do that with the offering of Om Tat Sat. This work, Lord, I'm offering unto you. So,
And my
yeah.
second question is why is understanding misidentification with the gunas especially important in today's fast paced and comparison driven world?
Identification with the gunas is the cause of all suffering. And the goal of life is to become free from the gunas. As Kali Yuga advances, the effects of Tamagun increase. As Kali Yuga advances, even Rajagun is badly tainted by Tamagun. So Sattvagun is lacking in today's environment as we head towards Kali Yuga and its final conclusion. So therefore, it is so important for us not to hang on to Prakriti or identify with it, but we need to learn how to transcend it, which we will discuss in the next session.
Thank you so much, Shantnuji, for today's wonderful session. And to all our viewers, do stay tuned with us as we meet again on next Thursday at 8 a.m. for another session on the Bhagavad Gita.
So Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.